How many of you have used Desire2Learn before? Fabulous. So I don't want to bore you to death. But for those of you who have not, if you've used anything like Moodle or Blackboard or Angel or any other learning management system, that's all it is. It's all translatable, all right? Most of your students will have experience with Desire2Learn, and quite frankly, most students are looking to get their grades and information on Desire2Learn. The nice thing about it is, I'm sure you've heard of FERPA today. If you haven't, you will, or it will be very drilled into you. FERPA is the Federal Education Privacy Act. It means that you cannot share students' grades with anybody, any more than you would want your grades shared. The nice thing about Desire2Learn is when you put it in the gradebook in Desire2Learn, it is FERPA proof. The only person that can get in there is that person. And if they have chosen to share their user credentials, that's their problem, not ours. So if mom and dad call, a helicopter parent calls, you cannot talk to them, whether you think or not. Even if they tell you, I am paying the tuition, it does not matter. You know that, some of you are smiling, you know that. I bet you filled your parents that way. I'm doing fine, don't worry about it. All right, so Desire2Learn, the two browsers you want to use, the only two browsers you want to use are Chrome and Firefox, all right? Internet Explorer is an option, Safari is an option. Internet Explorer is riddled with issues, all right? So my strong suggestion is just use Chrome or Firefox. We find that Chrome tends to be the most bulletproof, all right? So, and what don't I see here? Well, there's no Chrome here, but there's Firefox. No, don't import anything. I should have done this before, I apologize. It's weird to look down like this. No, go away. All right, so to get into Desire2Learn, there's two ways to do it. Number one, you can go to montana.edu, and on the very bottom of the home page, there's a button called Desire2Learn. What most people do, if you're anything like me, I'm a bookmark freak. So it's a problem when I get onto a computer that doesn't have my bookmarks because I can't find anything. So if you just type ecat.montana.edu, oops, that's not going to work. This will get you to Desire2Learn. All right, so I apologize. Some of you, this is like, are you kidding me? I've already been here, done that. But some of you haven't, so I go through everything. So this is your login page for montana.edu. I would bookmark it. So I just have a folder called D2L, and I got all my help pages and all that stuff in there. So what I'm going to do is, if you guys are all brand new GTAs, so you may have a student account. However, if you have been assigned a course, if you know, any of you know that you're an instructor of record right now? In other words, in Banner, you would actually see your name next to your section. Some of you do, some of you don't. If you have been assigned, you have a Desire2Learn shell as an instructor, not a student, all right? Logging into Desire2Learn is the same whether you're a student or an instructor. Nothing changes, all right? But you may need to watch out because I'm guessing a lot of you are also enrolled in classes. So you're going to have to be aware there's an instructor tab and a student tab, and you need to be on the right one because you're going to look in at midnight some night and say, where the heck is my lab that I'm supposed to be grading? Well, it's because you're in the student tab. You're in your own courses versus an instructor. So you are all instructors. You have the power. So what I'm going to do, sorry, I can't type and talk. I think I said that before. I'm going to log in as my veritable instructor, Albus Dumbledore. I have several classes that are fake and dummy classes, etc. So Albus is an instructor. So what you're going to see is what you will see as an instructor. What's important to understand is that when you are an instructor and a student, you will see two tabs here. One says instructor, one says student. So if for some reason you don't see the course you're looking for, try to hit the other tab. All right, it's really easy to mix it up because it's just everything looks the same except it's instructor versus student. So most of you know what's going on here. The top bar, wow, that's like really big. The top blue bar is called your mini bar. That never disappears, it stays on all the time, all right? When you walked into Leon Johnson, you walked into Desire2Learn. So think of being in the lobby as being in Desire2Learn. When you walked through room 33, the room of 339, you now have walked into your course in Desire2Learn. So right now, I'm standing outside in the lobby. So it has all your courses listed. Once I choose to get into a course, Now I've gotten into Desire2Learn, into my course, all right? So how do you know? Well, first of all, you'll see way up top here, there's the practice course. That tells you the name of your course, so that's how you know where you are. Also, you'll see the name of your course right here. Anytime you want to go back home, back to safety, back to square one, just hit the My Home, all right? Now you're back out in the lobby, okay? So that's how you get in and out of your courses. There's the calendar, there's Desire2Learn Help, and in Desire2Learn Help, we tried to create it so that all you ever had to do, lucky you, is go to Desire2Learn, and everything you could possibly need is at your fingertips. Desire2Learn Help, Montana State Help, all that kind of stuff. Same thing for MSU resources. I believe the library's in there, the events and all that. So what I want to go over real quickly is how to, number one, pin your courses, how to change your profile, and how to also get into your courses and make them active. That's probably the most important thing. As of January 3rd, students could see anything in your courses if you did not hide it. Good news, bad news. They can see it. However, if you forget to activate your course, your students can see nothing. That's a really common question we get the first day of classes. How come I can't see my courses? So we go in and we say, who's your instructor? Sorry, your instructor has not activated the course, so you need to contact your instructor. And so then we get the phone call from the instructor that says, why can't my students see the courses? Well, because you didn't activate the course. The default is for it to come inactive, so you have to activate it. Let's see. So, first of all, to pin a course, D2L does a lot with drop-down menus. That's one of its forms of navigation. So if you hit the drop-down menu, you'll notice these little push pins over here. They're probably really hard to see, but they're actual push pins. And think about it like a regular push pin. If you pin a course, it will come to the top of your list. Since you guys are relatively new, my guess is you may not have very many courses. But if you've been here for a while, it's possible a lot of your courses will show up. So you want to make sure the course that you're interested in stays on top. So for example, I pinned this practice course, so now it's going to always appear on top. Professors who have been here for 3 or 4 or 8 semesters, you can imagine their laundry list, because nothing disappears in D2L. It's always there. It'll go to sleep, but it never disappears. So the first thing you might want to do is to pin a course. And when you do that, it'll go to the course, but notice if I come back here, whoop, it should have pinned it. Notice it'll pin it. It just is a way to put your courses up on top. It organizes you a little better. Now, those of you who've been through Desire2Learn, you know what these buttons mean. Remember, the blue bar never disappears. No matter where you are in Desire2Learn, it stays here. So the envelope talks about the pager, which I think is really kind of old technology. But if you've ever figured it out, and I bet you 10 to 1 if you were here for a while, you figured this out, you can really annoy your instructor by paging them. Because what ends up happening is if you page them, their computer beeps until they figure out what the heck it is that's beeping. And that, yeah, I know. I had an instructor come in and she said, oh, I'm so glad you explained that. I said, what are you talking about? She said, I used to come in and my computer, when I would log into D2L, would just beep at me. And I said, well, she said, it's the pager. And I said, so she goes to the student the next day when she sees her and says, what did you need? She goes, I don't know, I was just clicking around. I thought it was kind of fun, see what happened to you. True story. So, you know, you've been students. Students are clickers. They'll click everywhere they can. They love to find out what's going on. This is notifications. This is also email, a way to get to email. Notifications is things that have changed in your course. So when you put up a new news item or you put up a new content, students will see that little red dot. I bet you some of you are learning something you didn't even know when you were an undergrad using this. This is subscription alerts. So this is update alerts, so if anything's been updated. But what I really want to do is go here. So this is what we call your profile. If you remember D2L before, if you've ever taught before, it used to be a role switch that you had to do if you wanted to see things as students see them. Well, now you can change your view right up here. So I can view it as a student, I can view it as a course assistant. I know you may think you are just course assistants. You're not, you are instructors. So you have all the full rights and responsibilities of an instructor, all right? Which means you can do everything to your shell, where you want to add content, change grades, grade things, etc. All right? So if you've ever worked for a professor as a course assistant, your role is now different. You've got much more capabilities, all right? And if you want to see what your students see, you can simply hit View a Student. all right? It's not 100% accurate, but just about. And if you were to say view as student, you'll notice, see how Dumbledore's name changes? It's white. So if you're looking around something, you're like, why can't I see this? It could be because you're in the wrong mode, all right? So all you gotta do is go up to your name, click on it, and change it back to instructor. Okay, so those of you who have used D2L before, how many of you have a profile picture up there? Yeah, you know what? You may or may not like to do it. Some people like Facebook, some people don't. I don't do Facebook. I got enough to keep track of. But you might want to, as an instructor, your role has shifted now. As of today, your role is shifted. You're no longer just a student. You are an instructor. So you kind of, this is why you've been getting all the training in the morning and stuff like that. You're now an instructor, no longer a student, at least in the eyes of your students who are in your section. So it's kind of nice to put a picture up there. When you get into Desire2Learn, if any of you have gone into your shell, if it's active, you can see your students. You get a name with a face. I mean, you're going to get to know your students really well, and you got to also be on the lookout. Sometimes people post inappropriate things, surprise, surprise. So you know what? You can be the adult here and say to your students, you know, I noticed your profile picture. I'm really glad you uploaded a picture, but you might want to consider a different picture, okay? But I always put in, I don't do Facebook or LinkedIn or that kind of stuff. But I do put in what my title is. I put in where I went to high school, where I went to college. Students are curious. I guarantee you, if you had, they're going to click into your profile to find out what you're all about. So you know what? Tell them a little bit about yourself. Or not. It's up to you. If you want to remain the dark horse, that's okay too. The next thing I want to show you is notifications. Now you have all this, and you've always had all this access. You just didn't know you did. So notifications really are more for students. I don't know if any of you as an undergrad use notifications. You can set it so you can get a text or an email that says, hey, heads up, a grade item has been posted, or a quiz is due soon. So I would strongly suggest, as an instructor, I wouldn't really do this too much because your phone or your email is going to light up like a Christmas tree. Every time a student posts, every time you change a grade item, it's going to drive you nutty. But students like that because then they can say in their phone and say, oh, I've got a new grade in D2L. So if you want to go ahead and decide and have notifications, this is where you can do it. This is the one that's really important. How many of you use email of some sort? Okay. I'm going to guess that every hand should have gone up because you need some sort of email. And guess what? You're an instructor now. You got to have an email, folks. Even if you use your montana.edu email, every single one of you has a montana.edu email. If you don't want to use it, that's fine. I'm going to show you how to use a different email. But the bottom line is, if you don't like the way D2L looks, here's your chance to play. If you notice, it probably doesn't look like what you see because I've chosen to change the fonts. So if I wanted to, I could be really creative. I don't even know what Georgia is. Let's find out. Oh, that's boring. Let's do... Oh, anybody got a suggestion? Ezra. All right. Anyway, bottom line is you can change the font and change its size. Now, old people like me, we need our things to be bigger and bigger because the older I get, the blinder I get. So I might turn it to huge. So this gives you an example of what the font will change to. So don't hesitate. This just changes it for your instance. Students can do this too. So they'll play with it. They'll put it in Chinese and be like, I can't read anything. Well, that's your issue. You guys are all face-to-face instructors, correct? Anybody? No, nobody's teaching an online section, are you? Okay. If you were, I would strongly suggest you to pay attention to the time zone change because if you have a student in Australia, which we've had, their time is very different than our time. And so they'll miss deadlines if they're not careful. So we always recommend leave it in mountain time. If you come up here, now what you may not be used to, as an instructor, you have a bunch of different ways to navigate in Desire2Learn. One of them is the drop-down menus, which you've seen. Another one are the tabs. I don't think you typically saw that as students very often. All right? So you want to pay attention to where tabs are, where drop-down menus are, and when you roll over items, then you get more information. So if I go to discussions, oh, I changed it, didn't I? Okay, let's go back. That's a bit big. Or is it better? You like it better? Sorry. I think I did this, and then I did medium. Oh, no, it was large. There we go. Those of you who remember D2L, do you remember how you always had to scroll down to get to the save button? You don't have to anymore, it now floats. So wherever you are, it'll float up. So there were some definite positive changes that happened when we went to the new version, which happened on December 19th. Come on. There we go. Where are we here? Okay, so let's go back to account settings and discussions. I recommend not changing anything here. How many of you think you might be using discussions? Do you know? Has your professor said anything? Okay. My guess is you probably won't. I'm guessing you're going to do like a gradebook and maybe Dropbox, or in other words, are you going to have items submitted to you electronically, do you think? Possibly? I don't know.
I'm thinking that.
Yeah, probably you're going to want to set up a gradebook. Do any of you know an instructor who's going to set up a master course that you copy? Has anyone said anything about that? All right. Any of these questions that I ask and you're starting to look at me like, oh my God, is she serious? Call us. We'll be more than happy to walk you through it. And if you need to, you can meet with us one-on-one. There's a lot of drop-in sessions scheduled in the next couple of weeks. So bottom line is I would leave discussions as they are, and this is purposely, and don't include the original post. You know how when you get an email and it's been forwarded 17 times and you have to scroll down to like the 4th page before you can actually get to the body of the email? That's why this is unchecked, so if you have a reply to a discussion, you don't get this long, huge laundry list that goes on and on. This is what I really want you to pay attention to, and I would suggest telling your students this is mandatory. If an instructor asks me to come in and do a short presentation for their class, which I'm more than happy to do if you'd like to, this is one of the things I ask them on the side first. I said, do you mind if I make it mandatory that they forward their email? Bottom line is email stays into Desire2Learn unless you forward it out, all right? This is a classic student. I didn't get the email. Well, you didn't get the email because you didn't check your Desire2Learn email. The way around that is to force all of your students to have a forwarding email address so that there's no way they can miss that email. And the way you do that is you go all the way to the bottom and you check this box called Forward Incoming Messages. What will happen is anytime an email bounces into Desire2Learn, it will automatically also bounce a copy to whatever email address you put in there. So in this case, I put my Gmail account in there. If I were you, I might put your montana.edu address in there. You know, a lot of people that are your age are saying, you know what, I want to be transparent, I want to do everything, but you might find with all your own school commitments, let alone your teaching commitments, you may want to have one place that you can go to that says, this is where I'm going to have any communication that lands for my class. All right, so you might want to put it in a montana.edu email, wherever you want to put it. So put it in there, mark forward and mark read in the inbox folder so you don't have a bunch of unread messages, and then hit save and close. I force all the students to do that. I'm mean. Because I just don't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with, I didn't get the email. Well, you did. You got it in Desire2Learn, and you got it into your personal email address, so no excuses. Yes?
Why do you mark it red?
I usually have it marked red because in typically speaking, I will get it in my personal email before I'll check the D2L email. And I'm going to show you why email can be kind of kludgy. I don't know if any of you dealt with email in D2L.
Oh,
It's
I got
kind
you,
of
but
painful.
It'll show up as unread in your.
Personal, yes,
Okay, I
yes.
thought, like,
It's just
email
Desire2Learn, it
shows
will,
red.
yeah. Okay, so that's what I wanted to cover there. And then, of course, the last one is the best one, which is log out. So that's how you log out. So what I'm going to do now is go into my practice course to just show you a few things. The most commonly used tools are up here, way up top, all right? All the tools are also right here. Nope, how about this one? There they are. All the tools are there. You're going to notice Quizzes is there, Dropbox is there, everything is there, all right? We just put the heavy hitter tools on top. So here's what I'm going to suggest. I'm going to go through how to load up content. So it could be, now if you've only been a student, you've never had to do this before. It's really, really easy, scary easy. So you can rag on all your professors now and say, why didn't you load it up? It was simple. So when you go to the content area, that's kind of the basic catch-all of where you want to be, all right? So content area, my strong suggestion would be there's an overview button. If I were you, I would put an overview in there. Throw in a syllabus, throw in whatever. The more times you can actually force the syllabus down the student's throat, so to speak, the more likely they are to somehow, some way, somewhere read it. Because you really want it to be read. I'm going to guess that for a lot of you, your syllabus will already be created by your instructor. You may not even need a personal syllabus, but if you keep throwing that information up there, there's no excuse for somebody not to find the information they need. Then what I would do is you go to table of contents. Now, this is a copy of the course I teach that's a fully online course, How to Teach Online. So it's already got things populated in there. Excuse me. If you don't have anything, whoops, at the bottom it'll say add a module. So this is how you add content. So for example, most people have a module called course information. So you create the module and there it is, it's a blank folder. So what I want you to think about, we talked about Desire2Learn being the lobby of Leon Johnson. We talked about your course being when you walked in the door. Now I want you to picture at the podium is a filing cabinet. And every time you load up files into Desire2Learn, you're filling that filing cabinet. So make it make sense. One of the things you're going to learn as a TA, as an instructor, because you are an instructor, is organization is your friend. No matter how disorganized you think you are, you cannot survive as an instructor unless you have some sort of organization. And it's not hard. So what I did was I just created a pull-out drawer in the filing cabinet. Called course information. So now what I'm going to do is put files into that course information. So I have a couple choices. If I have my syllabus and it's on a flash drive, I can do it that way. I can put it on my desktop. I can do it whatever way I want to. I can drag it in here, or if I hit the new button, I can say upload, and I can go on to my desktop, and I wonder if, I bet you 10 to 1 there's no, let's see, how about downloads? Recent places. Well, I should have brought my flash drive. Essentially what you would do is you click on a file, hit open, and then say upload, and there it is. It literally, that's how fast it is. Let's do this. Let's see if I can find it from, what I'm going to do, upload file. Okay. I just went to the course offering because I've got this course is long established. So now I can go into my files within D2L and say, okay, I know my syllabus is in Let's Get Started, and there it is right there. Strong word of caution. Do yourself a favor and upload PDFs. Now the reason is that I didn't even think anybody was this clever, but Word documents can be altered. Don't underestimate the cleverness of students. If they spent half the time studying that they do figuring out the loopholes, they'd be successful. But I think for some reason it's funner to figure out the loopholes. So I had an instructor this summer who took the course, the online course, and he said he had a graduate student who actually took his PDF file of his syllabus, downloaded it, altered the dates within the syllabus, and then pointed to that and said to him, hey, these are the dates, you can't hold me to this. And he had no recourse, all right? So my strong suggestion, I know, believe me, you're gonna learn as an instructor, they did what? I mean, look at the people that hacked into Target, into First Interstate, and Rose Hours were hacked, I mean, come on. Bottom line is, if you really wanna be safe, do a PDF, put a revision number in a Word, make it a Word document, put a revision number in your syllabus, make it into a PDF and lock it. Then nobody can change anything, okay? So I can upload my syllabus, and I just say add, and there it is. It's that simple, all right? So it's really simple to add content. What about adding a link? Say you were researching something, or you wanted your students to have a link to, I don't know, safety procedures for a lab or something like that. You can actually also create a URL, a link. So it says, well, what do you want to do? Well, I'm going to do to Google. I told you I can't type and talk. So I'm going to say, it's late. Always choose to open as external resource. If you, that really, I don't know why Desire2Learn does this. Open as external resource is another name for saying open in a new window. That's what they're saying. So you want to do that so that students don't lose Desire2Learn. They can still navigate back to that tab. If you've ever been a student and an instructor didn't do this, it's maddening because it feels like you lost D2L. And you say create, And now what it does is it brings me to the table of contents. You're like, where'd I go? Well, breadcrumbs, you all know about that in the internet. You can come back to where you were. Here's the module I created. Here's the filing cabinet I created. Or if you look at this little tab, this handy dandy little tab, it'll now let me go back in time. So I could go back to course info, or I can even go up to the table of contents. So I'm going to come back here, and now you see there's 2 links. So within a minute, you can put up your syllabus, put up your schedule. I know instructors who put up answer keys to quizzes, like lab quizzes, or all sorts of other things, okay? You doing okay, or are you getting, yes?
So I see a published one there.
Right there,
So
yes.
if you have material that you don't want to be published, or
You're not ready for it to be hit.
if you want it unpublished?
Yep, you can change it to draft. You'll see it, but the students won't. So for example, if I do draft, now it says draft. This is what I love about this handy dandy button. I come up here and I say, yeah, you know what? I do want to see it as a student. Now remember, what I did is I made the course information module a draft. So now if I go to student and I look at what my students see, notice they see course information. Oh, sorry. There was also another, I was doing this morning, I apologize. There was a module in there called course information. If you recall, I called it course info. It's now hidden. Students don't see it. But if I go back to an instructor, by doing this, and I go back to content, now I can still see course info. It's just in draft form, so it's a great question. You can also date release it. So for example, if you come out of here and you're all excited about making sure your shell is all wonderful before day 1, you can actually build it out and just put everything as draft, all right? I think I forgot to tell you how to make your course active. So I'm gonna go back home, I'm gonna go back in the lobby, and here's my list of courses. When you see your courses, what you're going to see is a pencil next to it. And then you'll see in parentheses, inactive. That should be a big flag to you that your course is not active. So in order to activate your course, what you want to do is hit the pencil and come down until you see the only option you have to change, which is make your course active. And then everybody can see it. Students did not have visibility into courses until January 3rd. So it's English works best. 5 days before the start of classes. So they had visibility as of January 3rd if the courses were made active. I got a call from a student today and he said, I can't see anything. I know I registered. So I said, well, is your bill current? Sorry, I have to ask that. He says, yeah. And so I went in and I asked him who his instructors were, and it turns out neither instructor had made the course active, so to him he doesn't have any courses whatsoever. But he will eventually. Let's see, let's talk about grades. I know I'm throwing a lot at you. Hang in there. And now you're going to have an appreciation for what your other instructors had to do if you use this as an undergrad. You're like, oh, are you kidding me? All right, so in order to create grades, you're going to want to go to the grade tool. And the first time you go through it, my guess is you'll go into here, which is the grade setup. You can go through this wizard. It's absolutely fine. It's not a bad idea to do it. I would touch base with your what do they call it, a supervising instructor? I can't remember what. Whomever is the person who you are GTAing for, let's put it that way, and ask them how they want the grade book to be set up. If they look at you with a blank look, or they say, it's up to you, I really don't care, I just want you to have the grades out, then you get to do whatever you want to do. Other instructors have very specific ways they want their GTAs to set up grade books, so you ought to touch base with your own instructor to find out what they want. It isn't unusual for GTAs to have a little bit more knowledge sometimes than instructors do. A lot of you have used Desire2Learn before. For some instructors who have been here for many, many years, this is all new to them, and the technology can be a little intimidating. So it's up to you. But what you want to do is go to Manage Grades, and then what you want to do is create a grade item and a grade category. So thinking of your course, the particular course you're TAing, I'm guessing you can probably break it down into tests, midterms, whatever, lab reports, labs, quizzes, papers, projects. Does that sound familiar? Okay, so those are the categories you want to create. So categorical data, I used to be a math professor. Categorical data is label data. So I want you to think about categories as you're putting the label on the manila folder. So if I do a category of, for example, I've got papers here, I've got Dropbox assignments, I have participation, surveys, exams, bonus, labs. This is a huge course that's got lots of mishmash in here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new category. So I'm going to create a category, and I'm going to call it, let's see if there's anyone I haven't used. How about, what's that?
Surveys.
Awesome. I think I had one there. So class surveys. In D2L uses a short name and a long name. It uses the short name in some places, the long name in other places. This is true for Dropbox items. It's true for grade items. Make sure you just duplicate it so that you don't end up with a blank column somewhere. So I'm going to come down here and say class surveys. All right. Now, this is a category. It's not a grade item. The can exceed would be if, for example, you had, say your survey was worth 10 points for participating, and you wanted them to earn 15 points. That's when you would check the can exceed button. It's different than bonus. Bonus simply means it adds to the numerator, not the denominator. All right? But this is a category, so I'm not going to change anything. It's just a label. All right? If you knew that all of your surveys, for example, let's say all your surveys were 10 points each, then what you want to do is if you want to drop the lowest survey, now a lot of GTAs deal with a lot of lab reports and quizzes and all these other things. And let's say you do 20 of them in the semester and you want to drop the lowest 2. Well, what you can do is you can ask Desire2Learn to drop automatically the lowest ones, all right? The only way you can do that, though, is if all the points are the same in every single survey. So I'm going to say, yeah, it's all going to be 10 points and they're all going to be distributed evenly. Unfortunately, that's the only way you can get Desire2Learn to automatically drop something, is if they're all worth the same number of points. There's a student view, and you can decide how they show. How many of you are in what I would call the STEM field, science, technology, engineering, math? Okay. It's sometimes very valuable to show students, particularly in entry-level courses. I'm thinking of my Chem 207 that I took, otherwise known as reader chemistry. You all know what that is. They love to show the averages. You know, the mean on the exam was 65. I earned a 36. Uh-oh. Or the mean on the exam was 65 and I got an 85. I'm good to go. But be careful of showing those distributions, only because as an instructor, take it from one who's been burned before, sometimes publishing information can be a little dicey. Sometimes it's just better to have them have the raw grade and then let the professor deal with what they're going to curve it as. In a category, remember it's just a label, I wouldn't show any of those things. And then this is how the students will see it. So I've got it defaulted that they're going to see the points grade scheme symbol is another word for letter grade. What letter grade are they going to see? All right. So I'm going to save and close. And because I've created a ton of different items, in order to see that, I've got to go all the way to the bottom. All right. So what I'm going to do is, well, I don't like where it is, so I'm going to reorder them. And what I'm actually going to do is make class surveys number 1, just so you can see it at the top. And I hit save. So do you see class surveys is up there? It's gray, means it's a category, all right? Now we're going to create a survey, a grade item underneath the category. So my guess is you're probably going to have 3 or 4 categories. What I would suggest you do, start with your grade book. I know that sounds strange, but if you start with your grade book, then you've got a basis for which you're going to figure out, oh, okay, I know I've got labs. Okay, how many labs do I have? I know I have surveys. How many surveys do I have? I know I have papers. I have a midterm. I have a final. Whatever it is you have, if you start with your grade book, then the rest of the logic of your course falls out from there. So what I'm going to do is say, okay, I've created that grade category. Now I'm going to create a grade item. You have a bunch of choices as to what kind of grade item you want to create. 99.9% of the time, you're going to create a numeric grade item. All right? Even if it translates into a letter grade, you're still going to probably base it on points. So what I'm going to do is create a numeric grade item. And now you've got, remember, you've got these tabs again. As an instructor, you have to get used to looking for the tabs in Desire2Learn as well as other things. So I'm going to call it Survey 1. And again, I'm going to do the same thing in the short name as the long name. Now, this is where you're creating an item. So you want to throw that item underneath the category of class surveys. Did I miss it? Oh, there, it's right on top. Okay. Notice the maximum points is grayed out. That's because I told Desire2Learn everything's going to be worth 10 points. All right? So you don't have to think about it anymore. So now this is an individual grade item. When I taught statistics, that was the only class that I offered extra credit after every single test. Because if you've taken statistics, you know it's not an easy course. So if I don't hit can exceed, and there is a bonus item, Desire2Learn will knock that grade right back to 0 to 100. So if you've got something that's worth 10 points and someone did an extra something, and so you want them to get 12 points on it, unless you hit can exceed, they won't get that 12 points. It'll knock it back down to 10, all right? This is not a bonus. This one kind of fools people. Exclude from the final grade calculation. Why the heck would I ever want to exclude something? In your case in particular, you might actually want to do some practice quizzes so that the students can see how they did, heads up, welcome to college, but it doesn't necessarily count. So you could actually have these grade items in the grade book, but they don't have to count. So that's when you would choose exclude from the final grade calculation. Percentage, don't let that fool you. That means, are you going to just do numbers? It's as opposed to letters. So I would leave that as default. If you have a class where some of you, if you're humanities, history, social sciences, etc., you have rubrics for papers and projects. You can include a rubric. And rubrics are cool to build because if you build them right, you can just go through and click the categories they fall into, and it instantly grades it for you. All right? Display options. This is where it's really important. Now, here is where you might want to actually show students the average of an exam. You could show them a distribution. Distribution is nothing more than a name for table for a picture, all right? You could show them the average. I've had, there was a physics professor I worked with a lot last semester, nice guy, and he was like, I want them to see that average. I'm like, oh, they did that well. He says, yeah. So if you want to show the average, you can. So the student view is the student view. Managing view is your view. All right, so what students see is on the top here, and what you see is on the bottom here. So for example, if you don't like this, like grade scheme color, that means if you've ever used Desire2Learn before and the professor didn't pay attention, there are actually colors that Desire2Learn uses for different grades. I think blue is 90 to 100, green is 80 to 90, yellow is 70 to 80, and below 70 is red, or pink, so that to get your attention. So I can say save and close. So now what you can see is we have the category of class surveys, and we have the one which is survey number 1. So that's how easy it is to create grade items. To grade something, I think the easiest thing to do is you want to hit, in Manage Grades, you want to hit the drop-down menu and choose Enter Grades. This, to me, is the easiest way to enter your students' grades. All right? So you can see the lovely characters I have in my class here. The nice thing too is that you can put their grade in. You can also leave a comment, and they will see that comment in their grade. So those of you who have always been a student, you're now getting flipped over and seeing the other side of the picture. So now you're saying, oh, so that's how they put that comment in there. Or, why didn't he ever put a comment in there? Let's see. I just want to show you one more thing, which is course content or course resources. Remember I told you that's where you get all the list of the tools? Well, here's probably the most important list, and this is the one that I guarantee you're going to go back to your apartment, your house, your room, and you're going to say, I want to see these people in my class. So you go to class list. This is where you're going to see all of your students' pictures. Okay, so if they have chosen to load up a picture, that's when you're going to see it. And then you're going to see how helpful it is to you, in some cases, to get a visual of who you're talking to as a student. It really is helpful when you have a student. I can remember when I was teaching online, I'd occasionally, I was in at all hours, but say I was in at 1 in the morning and someone sent me a snarky email, I would actually go to the class list, and I always required them to upload a picture, and I would stare at that picture and remind myself that this student is a human being, and despite the snarkiness of their comment, maybe they had a bad day. Maybe they were under stress. Maybe they're frustrated, and they just haven't figured out how to express it other than nastily. It does make a difference. You can see some of the people that I've added to the course because I've said, and if you want access, if you want to look at a course, I am more than happy to put you in as a student or an instructor. Just bounce me an email. I'm more than happy to put you in a course so you can see how things get set up. But the bottom line is this tends to be the easiest way to email somebody. Try emailing just from the course list, otherwise it gets really confusing. You can also, this is really cool, if you click on the drop-down menu next to their name, you can do view progress. This shows you exactly what your students have and have not chosen to look at. The nice thing is, it will tell you all of their current grades and that kind of thing. But the nice thing too is that you can see, if I go to content, I can now see just how much, well, and in this case, poor Velma has done nothing. But you can just see how much students have clicked through, all right? Does it mean they read it? I don't know. It means they clicked into it. Does it mean they absorbed it? Only knows. But at least you know they've looked in it. So when a student says, I've been everywhere in your course and I can't find it, you can be like, no. Or, yeah, you have, and let's sit down and figure this out. So if I choose to go back to class list, I'm going to suggest that if you want to email, this is the best place. So for example, let's say you want to email your entire course. Now you know there's a way to do that in Banner. If you go into Banner, you can also email from the class list. However, if you just check this box, it chooses everybody, and you can then say email. And it'll open up a Desire2Learn email with all the students in there, okay? Here's one word of caution. D2L in its infinite wisdom said that, well, what we're going to do is we're going to only allow you to email what you can see. Notice I have page 1 of 2, and I almost guarantee you that all of you do. You probably have more than 20 students in your class. Make sure you make it so that it's the maximum number that are in the class. See the page 1 of whatever disappeared? Now if I choose to email everybody, it's going to grab everybody. Previously it only grabs the people on the first page, which is really annoying because that student could be absolutely accurate when they say, I didn't get your email. Well, if you didn't include the whole list, then they don't get the email. And now if I do that and say email, I think it's a little bit longer. All right? I think that's the easiest way to email because email tends to go, you have to separate it by section. So what I'm going to show you is how to separate by section. When you get into email, a lot of times people will miss some of these things. If you look at filter by, this is really important for you if you happen to be enrolled in, if your professor has merged all the sections, then that becomes a problem because all the sections appear. So when you go to look at a list, you're like, I don't recognize half of these people. It's because they're nobody in your section. They're in the other sections. So what you want to do is filter it so that you're only looking at a particular course. So for example, I could just look at emails from the demonstration course, and it says I've got none. That's where you want to be able to filter it so that you only see your section. Because I guarantee you, if you're a GTA, you're working for a professor who's got a course that has several sections. That's why you've been hired. All right? So just make sure the same thing is true with grades. You can separate it by section. All right? Do any of you know for sure that you've got more than one section? Yeah, some of you might. And it's the same course, same professor? Okay. What may happen is that professor may merge those. You probably have responsibility for 2 or 3 sections. He or she may merge those courses so that it's just one course, but then it's going to be vital for you to be able to separate things by section so that you can tease out who you're dealing with and you won't drive yourself batty. If you want to copy a course, I can walk you through that at some point. I'm guessing you're probably a little on overload right now. So, did everybody get a business card? If you didn't, I'll make sure you get one, or maybe someone can share. So everybody write this information down. My extension is on the front of it. Please don't hesitate to call me personally. I really don't mind. That's my job. There are many, many drop-in sessions, starting on, if you go to, oh, where is it? I should have brought a bunch of flyers. If you go to the,
Man, we'll talk afterwards, I'll make sure to put it on the link that I send out to everybody.
fabulous.
And that way we'll just bullet point it out, number,
Great.
when they are, that kind
Thank
of
you.
thing.
That was my bad for not creating that
No,
one
I
for
knew
you.
that people would be on overload right now,
Yeah.
just a little bit.
So, do you have any general questions, no matter how specific or how general or off the wall? Yes?
You had talked about date releasing.
Do you mean, sure, more than happy to. So let's say, for example, you wanted to date release, well, let's say I was gonna date release my biography. What you can do is, if you get into it, that's not what I wanted. Let's come back here. What I can do is I can come up here, even I get I get confused by this. So let's say it was my biography, that's my module, I've got one file underneath it. So what I'm gonna do is add date restrictions. So you can add a start date, a due date, and an end date. A due date is probably not relevant for content, but it's very relevant for Dropbox items. Because the difference between a due date and an end date, a due date is when it's actually due, an end date is when it disappears for students. So the nice thing is that I could add a due date and still have it open, but D2L will tell me how many hours, minutes, days late the student was in submitting it, which is nice. So I can just click on start a date, and then I can say, well, you know what, classes don't start till the 8th, so I'm gonna wait till the 8th. And my class, I'm gonna say it starts at 1 o'clock, so I don't want them to see it before 1 o'clock. And then if I just say update, this will now tell me that this will not open and the students won't see it until that time. So it's that simple. You can also, hang on just a second, you can also go to edit course, and then there's something called, where is it? I'm looking for manage dates. Oh, there it is. So this is everything that's in my course. I can change the date of release. So that's one quick way to do that. Does that make sense? Okay, yes.
You have a student who's going to be gone on a vacation or a trip, and have access to something earlier. Is there a way to do that?
Absolutely. One thing you can do, and this is very common for, say, quizzes or Dropbox items. If I go to a quiz, for example, and I go to edit it, if I go to restrictions, there is restrictions, where's advanced restrictions? Allow users special access. So what you can do is you can set up a quiz or other items such that only that student has access at that time. If you wanted to, you could set up an IP address, even if you wanted to. But that's what's really nice about when you do the Dropbox. You want to think about Dropbox as the great big blue postal service mailbox. You know, students pull open the door, submit their file, and it's gone, and they don't worry about it. But if I look at, for example, this folder, I'm hoping this one has, let's see. So this is what a Dropbox folder looks like. The students have electronically submitted everything. So I can see what their submissions are, but if I go over to here, nobody submitted it late. Let's try a different one. I was just trying to show you one that had, excuse me. I'm pretty sure this guy does. There it is. Do you see how it says 15 hours late? I had a due date, and then I had an end date. The due date was, say, the 3rd, and then I have an end date. So it's still open, and students can submit, which then they think, oh, cool, they didn't pay attention. But no, I actually have a due date, so I can see that, I don't remember who this is, because this is, oh, Shaggy. Well, you know, Shaggy's kind of casual, so he was about 15 hours late. And you can tell how late they are. And you can decide, maybe they're late because they literally were in the hospital with appendicitis, so yeah, it's okay, it's legit. Or, no, you just were lazy and you were late, so everything's done. So you can do that with quizzes, with Dropbox items, with things like that, and give special access to just certain students. And if you have any questions about things like that, just give us a call. Because a lot of this, you'll be like, and then you go to do it, and it's like, oh, I don't remember what she said. So, anything else? They're so quiet. All right.
Question about
Yes.
this late thing. I was just, I guess it depends on the class size probably, but it almost seems like something where if it's online and they're turning it in, like if you just made it hard where if they didn't turn it in, then they have to get it to you. So that
Yes.
it's even a better way to know.
You've got a really good point. I don't know if everyone heard it. There's thoughts about, do I allow them to be late, or do I just say, you snooze, you lose, and if you're not gonna make it on time, then you gotta figure out how to get it to me physically. And I entirely agree and understand with that. This actually was probably more appropriate for online courses where you don't have that flexibility. But here's where it is. Here's a start date, a due date, and an end date. What you could do is just not have a due date. You could just have an end date. And what'll happen is the student will see the folder, but there's nowhere to click. There's nowhere to submit it. You're done. And so, when I first started teaching public high school, one of the teachers said to me, she said, the best advice I can give you is don't smile until Thanksgiving. I was like, what? But the one piece of advice I can give you is you can always ease up, you can never clamp back down. So when in doubt, my strong suggestion is be fair, communicate everything to your students up front, but be very strict, because you can always ease things out, but clamping back down is nearly impossible. So that may not be a bad idea, just not even have a due date, just say boom. If you don't get it to me by then, you either get it to me physically, and when you do, I'm gonna expect a little bit of groveling, I'm guessing that a lot of you may have introductory level courses. You kind of have to look back at yourself when you were a freshman, and it's maybe the first time away from home, maybe the first taste of freedom, maybe a lot of firsts. And part of our job, honestly, is to not just impart the information, but to help them grow academically into maturity. And you guys are academically mature students. You wouldn't be sitting here if you aren't. But now you gotta kind of reverse your role, switch the desk, and go on the other side of the desk and understand where they are. And and sometimes the best lesson you can give them is tough love. You didn't get it to me on time, sorry. They won't make that mistake again, or they won't last. So, anything else? Please don't hesitate to call, we're here to help, and I would be more than happy for you to all call. And it's a busy time of the semester, but I promise you, if you email or call, we will get back to you, promise. All right, thank you.